Every one of them is watching you right now. Jaws drop, eyes widen, and heads turn. Would you think that's the same person? They grumble, unable to link your current situation with your history. I observed your change. They are really taken aback. It wasn't merely a change of look. It was a complete metamorphosis of your whole being. The dramatic change was not only physical. The way you carry yourself, the confidence in your voice, and the determination in your gaze. You are an entirely different person than you were before. And this is generating a stir. It's a social media firestorm. People who have met before are reconnecting. Everyone is fascinated about your little-known information. They are watching your every move, researching and dissecting you in the hopes of capturing even a fraction of the extraordinary magic that you have created. When they see who you have become, some are inspired, others are jealous. But when they see what you've become, they can't believe it. The vacation you took has changed you into something they never believed possible. You are a live example of the transforming power of change. Once upon a time, you felt invisible, not because you lacked worth, but because the world refused to recognize your presence, as if you were trapped in a thick, stifling cocoon. You felt shut off from others, misunderstood, and out of place. Even in halls full with familiar faces, you felt like a stranger. Even if you were there, the words you said hardly echoed beyond your lips. Nobody noticed you. You felt the weight of loneliness crushing on your chest, serving as a subtle reminder of your uniqueness. In addition, you learned to shrink in a world that is unkind to individuals who are different. Over the years, you were unable to escape the shadows and continuously questioned your own choices. It's conceivable that you were raised to think small, be polite, and never take up too much space. This might have been the reason of your actions. One probable reason is that it was the unsaid but persistent belief that you were insufficient. A belief that had taken root long before you were ready to question it. At the same time that you were waging an unseen battle inside yourself, you saw others go about their lives with ease. During discussions, you were very aware of the judgments, sideways looks, and dismissive tones being employed. After some time, you came to believe what they had projected upon you, that you were unworthy of being understood, appreciated, or praised. On the other hand, you were restricted not just by your surroundings, but also by your own thoughts. The voices of self-doubt were more prominent with each passing day, implying that they were accurate in their judgment. You may not have been extraordinary. Maybe you were meant to be ignored in the first place. You absorbed the negativity around you like a sponge, and as a consequence, you were carrying responsibilities that were never meant to be yours. You were an empath, therefore you felt everything too deeply, including every sigh of disappointment, whispered criticism, and unsuccessful effort. You absorbed it rather than rejecting it. It defines your identity. If your heart is overflowing with God's blessings, let that love radiate. Click the mega thank you button and donate $200 or more to sow seeds of faith that will touch countless lives. Your giving exemplifies His richness. Be a channel for His grace and watch His kingdom grow through you. For years, you hid behind a mask to avoid becoming an outcast. You pushed yourself to fit into situations that would never have been regarded proper in order to make others feel more comfortable. You toned down your glitter. As a consequence, you've grown more compact, silent, and easy to digest. Nonetheless, be aware of how hard you tried. You would never be able to really belong. It was hard to ignore the pervasive emptiness, and there was always a disconnect with the depths of your existence. You were conscious that you were more than the world perceived you to be. Despite the fact that you knew you weren't meant to stay in the background, you couldn't figure out how to go ahead. This was the cocoon, an uncomfortable, suffocating, and unforgiving atmosphere. It convinced you that living alone was your destiny. It said in quiet tones that no one would ever understand you. On the other hand, the cocoon was never a prison. Rather, it was a place of preparation, a calm incubation for something greater. One thing the world did not notice was that something was growing inside of you. It was a spark, a power, or a force about to be unleashed. When the voices of doubt, the whispers of inadequacy, and the shadows of the past push you so low that you understand the truth, it was never your responsibility to bear. There comes a point when the weight becomes something, yet you are unable to bear the anxieties that tortured you were never really yours. Rather, they were carefully and purposefully placed there by people who were terrified of your potential. Those who urged you to use less light were not trying to protect you from danger. Rather, they were seeking to keep you in a subservient position. You become more aware of how they gradually eroded your confidence while posing as concern or counsel. They forced you to mistrust your own instincts and made you rely on them for advice and approval. They skewed your reality and tried to persuade you that you were too sensitive and ambitious. It never was about you. It was all about them. They transferred their concerns, failures, and limits onto you. Everything started with them. You first resisted coming to this realization. The thought that you were just unlucky and that life was not going your way is a more comfortable excuse to embrace. However, when you research more, you uncovered other patterns. These patterns included backhanded praise, sudden coldness as you earned success, and a guilt trip when you tried to prioritize yourself. Every incidence of self-doubt was carefully organized to maintain you in your position. Furthermore, you continued to play along for a long time, believing that if you just put in more effort and exhibited your worth, others would eventually realize it. On the other hand, something breaks. The breaking point is not always audible. Occasionally, you may have a moment of insight that is both calm and profound. This is the point at which you realize you no longer recognize yourself. You can see the exhaustion in your eyes, the hesitation in your posture, and the fading of a fire that was never meant to die out. It dawns on you that you have spent your whole life catering to the wants of others, shrinking and making sacrifices while others gain from your silence. When you get to that point, you decide it's enough. It is time to cease utilizing gaslighting. I've got enough of being manipulated. Now is the moment to quit giving up your power. You are certain that you will not let them continue to control your tale. As time passes, you begin to tear down the incorrect ideas that they have weaved into your identity. You refute every assumption that says you are insufficient. You cut the cords that held you to their expected behaviors and made your own choices. Each step you take brings you closer to regaining yourself. To speak the truth, you are already aware that the game is rigged, and if you pay closely, you will see that the ceiling is being raised. Now let us discuss the steps we are doing to remedy this problem. People have the right to demand certain goods when they are dependent on the market for survival. When profit and property control the country, when they demand to be heard, held accountable, and given a fair hand. Right away, it's scary. Stepping into the light after years of living in the dark is an unpleasant and, in some circumstances, terrible experience. Even today, echoes of doubt remain, threatening to draw you back. You continue to move. You continue to make your own choices. When this happens, something extraordinary occurs. The horror that had before made you powerless starts to subside. Even if you thought you didn't have any power, it was always there. It was only waiting for you to retake it. You aren't here by coincidence. Feel the pull tap. Join to discover the truth, your purpose, and a tribe that understands. This is more than just a membership. It's your call. Stop living as a version of yourself imposed by others and embrace the reality of who you actually are. This marks the start of something that cannot be halted. In fact, the breaking point does not signal the end. Rather, it marks the beginning of the genuine change. There's no going back. Once the spark of change has lit, the former version of yourself, the one who moved cautiously, hesitated, and lived in the shadows of other people's expectations, is no longer in your life. What replaces it is unbreakable, something wild. The whole universe intended to keep you imprisoned within the elegantly constructed box. But you've gobbled the box to the point of ash. You have now been reborn from the dead. At first, the metamorphosis seemed unusual and unexpected. As you stand taller, talk confidently, and move with purpose, you're growing more confident. You no longer have the hesitant tone in your voice. There is no longer any doubt, which used to cloud your mind. It has been deleted. You are no longer awaiting permission to be brilliant. Instead, you're expressing your right to be great. And it feels great. This isn't a performance. There is no concealment here. This is the person you were meant to be a part of. As time passes, You become aware of how much of your past was based on illusions. You were never the cause of your own fear of being noticed. Rather, it was something placed on you. The craving for approval from other sources was a trap set to keep you reliant on others. Words placed in your head by people who never wanted you to succeed comprised the negative self-talk that occurred anytime you let go of everything. A change happens in the circumstance. You can no longer apologize for your presence in order to make others feel more comfortable. You stop downplaying your brilliance. Stop living your life for the approval of others and instead live it for yourself. The whole world is aware of this. There is a power inside you that must be acknowledged at this time. Those who were formerly disinterested in you are now taken aback by your transformation. It is not because your look has altered that people do not recognize you. Rather, it's because your energy has changed. You emit a distinct vibe today. It is a confidence so steadfast that it shocks people who had reservations about you to their core, and an aura so undeniable that it demands attention. You are no longer exposed to the effect of dread. You've developed into the power that others are terrified of. This isn't because you are cruel. There is no cause to seek retaliation. This is because you will not be stopped. The act of rising from the ashes of an awful existence, of forging every ounce of anguish, scar, and drop of self-doubt into armor, is an achievement with poetic qualities. You were once the same person who pled for acknowledgement, ached for recognition, and fretted about falling short of expectations. You have erased all trace of your prior self, and what remains is something that cannot be eradicated. At this point, the whole world has no option but to see your climb. It's difficult to deny that the ripple effect has begun. When you step into your power, the world that had previously disregarded you comes to a full standstill. Those who had previously overlooked you are now making a double take. Their eyes shone with uncertainty and dismay. Are you certain? That's correct. Despite their greatest attempts, they cannot fathom the change. They are no longer acquainted with the version of you who was cautious, timid, and doubtful, and what is presently in front of them is unexpected. You aren't here by coincidence. Feel the pull tap. Join to discover the truth, your purpose, and a tribe that understands. This is more than just a membership. It's your call. Whispers are the first to begin. Relatives from the past, old colleagues, and even individuals who had previously ignored you are now engaging in discussion with you. The sheer size of your progress has captured the attention of others. Those that are apprehensive are trying to make sense of the changes that have occurred. They are keeping a careful watch on you, evaluating your every move and seeking answers. They will, however, be unable to discover them since this change was not the result of external validation, a fortuitous break, or anybody else's approval. It came from people who failed to see your ability and are now paying the price for their mistake. People that had previously ignored you are now interested in joining your organization. People who previously doubted you are now unable to take their attention away from you. It makes them wonder how they lost the chance to glimpse your potential in the past, how they failed to see the fire that was always blazing under the surface. You have no responsibility for their supervision. Some folks will get motivated. Your transformation will demonstrate to them that change is possible, evolution is inescapable, and greatness can be claimed once they see you. They will see that they, too, are capable of leaving their old identities and reaching new heights. However, some individuals will react negatively. They are filled with jealousy. Their minds are racing as they seek an explanation, logic, or excuse to diminish what you have become as a result of their acts. When they mention how you must have changed, they will whisper it as if it were an insult. They will cling to their outdated beliefs about you, making every attempt to convince themselves that this was merely a phase in their relationship with you. On the other hand, they understand that you will never be the same person you were before. This is terrible for them because it forces them to face their own stagnation, which they had been avoiding. This exposes the falsehoods they've told themselves, such as the reasons, comfort zones, and fear that have kept them stuck. They've realized that while you were fleeing, they were keeping themselves bound. They do not celebrate your success, but rather see it with resentment. However, you should not feel guilty for their distress. Just because others are unable to see your development does not make it any less real. You no longer need to get permission or wait for sanction. You represent the storm's ferocity, fury, and energy, which cannot be ignored. You have progressed from imperceptible to undeniable. There was a moment when you bent yourself into shapes that were not your own. To be accepted by others, you reduced your profile, toned down your brightness, and kept it low because you felt that this was the price you had to pay to feel like you belonged. However, it is no longer the case. There is no trace of that previous version of yourself. You have freed yourself from the weight of their expectations, and as a consequence, you may now go through the world without self-consciousness. Allow others to claim that you have developed. They will act as if your confidence is a trespass, as if your growth is an attack. You're aware that it was never about you. They were never really uncomfortable with you. They were uneasy with what your transformation showed about them. They are compelled to face their own fears, inertia, and inability to advance. When people are exposed to your light and feel uncomfortable, they project that discomfort onto you, instead of gazing inwards. However, their points of view are no longer legitimate. In this case, you are no longer accountable for carrying the weight of their uneasiness in order to make others feel safe. You won't shrink. You are not going to lower your voice so they can talk over you. You will not make yourself less desirable in order to become more pleasant. You have spent enough time locked inside a cage built by their judgments. And now that you've broken free from the prison, you'll never go back. With this newfound perspective, you realize that you no longer need to maintain unhealthy relationships in order to meet your duties. You are aware of the people who only loved you when you were easy to control, those who supported you while you were suffering, and those who despised you when you began to thrive. Furthermore, you gave them complete freedom with no explanations or apologies required. Yes, you've changed. Some individuals may attempt to guilt you by claiming you have changed. You are no longer the same person as before. This is the major point. It is not true that you think you are better than us now, but you do. And this is why it irritates you even more. You will not slow down for somebody who is reluctant to continue progressing. If there are those who are terrified of heat, you will not extinguish your fire at this time. You are fully embracing your power. And if it makes other people uncomfortable, it is up to them to battle against their feelings. You are no longer required to provide emotional support to them. You can no longer negotiate your light. Your size was never meant to be a barrier. The world attempted to convince you differently. They aimed to bind you to a version of yourself that was easier to control and ignore. However, at this point, you are completely bonded to your highest timeline, and there is no way back. When you assert your authority, it is no longer true that you are the person they formerly thought you were. You have developed into something much beyond what they could have ever imagined. This extends beyond ordinary self-assurance. This is not just an act of self-love, but it also represents divine alignment. Everything in the universe has been waiting for you to seize this opportunity and take control of your destiny. Because you understand that your worth is unquestionable. You no longer seek proof because you believe that everything you do is guided by someone much greater than yourself. You no longer have any reservations about the direction you are following. You've finally arrived at the place where you were always meant to be, and everything is beginning to fall into place without effort. It is difficult to reject the influence without making any effort. You inspire others. The fact that you are here is more powerful than any words because of the energy you emanate. People are drawn to and captivated by you. They want to know what changed and how you implemented the change. They study every step you perform in the hopes of determining the process behind your advancement. It is only a question of choosing. There's no secret. One must decide to completely embrace oneself and refuse to accept anything less than the person who was planned for them. It is crucial to emphasize that this power was not achieved without cost. It was vital for you to let rid of everything that no longer served you. Include the harmful relationships, restrictive ideologies, and narrow-minded attitudes that sought to cage you. Your fire completely destroyed everything here. Then, from the ashes, you created something that cannot be stopped. You now walk with purpose. Each of your acts and statements exudes unflinching confidence. The things that used to bother you no longer have an impact on your life. Those doubts that used to haunt you are no longer present in your thoughts. You no longer have the energy to dedicate to the diversions that formerly held your attention. You are unwavering, fixed in your ways, and unapproachable. This procedure is the act of entering into your spiritual birthright. To truly become the person you were always intended to be is to finally become yourself. The whole world is forced to take notice of the issue. You're not the only one. You may have spent a large period of time as an outsider. You could have felt like the black sheep, the one who never fit in, or the one who saw through the lies while everyone else slept. You may have nursed self-doubt, pondered the causes for your distinctiveness, and wondered whether there was something wrong with you. But now you see that you were never supposed to be a part of their world. Rather, you were intended to be a member of something greater than it. At the time, you are not the only one who is becoming conscious. In every direction you look, people are freeing themselves from their ties. Those who were always meant to shatter illusions, disrupt the current quo, and step into their divine power are now doing so. These are the folks that are waking up. You're able to feel it, right? You are being dragged forward by the change, the electricity in the air, and the undeniable speed. Your transformation isn't only about you. It is also a signal to others, a light for those still lost in the darkness. As soon as they see you triumph, they realize that they, too, have the capacity to break free. Each time you give someone permission to walk in their own truth, you are giving them permission to do the same every time you refuse to shrink. You inspire others to reach their best potential by serving as a role model. You show that the limits they were taught are nothing but fantasies. It is crucial to remember that your rise will not go unnoticed. Individuals who previously had reservations about you will be forced to look at others who have mocked, ignored, or underestimated you. You will be able to see your ascent to notoriety, but they will be helpless to stop it. The voices who sought to imprison you in a small posture will now murmur in astonishment.